Man, oh man, oh man. I threw y'all off in the comments, didn't I? I see a lot of y'all being like, wow, 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 wow. Now I said, man, oh man, oh man. Today we have things to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2. Honestly, not exactly great news. It's back to the game keycard discussion, which is not a good look as of right now, but we'll talk about what this means for the future. And we also have other stories such as games getting confirmed for the Switch 2, some that I was not expecting. And yeah, you already know what I'm about to ask for. We're so close to 18,000 subscribers. Can we hit that before I head to New York City at the end of the month? If you guys have not subscribed yet, please consider subscribing, as we've been uploading every single day on this channel with something Switch related. Everyone's been loving the videos, and we plan on continuing it for the month of May, especially when we're vlogging the Nintendo Switch 2 line experience. Without further ado, let's jump right into today's news. Okay, let's get the big one out of the way. We have an updated thing regarding Arc Master System. We actually talked about how their game got leaked last night, where they're working on something for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's got a whole project name behind it. Even a code name, actually, a project code name, something like that. They have it leaked for November of this year. A lot of people have been speculating what that game is. I'm still thinking it's Guilty Gear Survive coming to the Switch 2. I think it's just a Switch 2 edition of that. They already had that game come out earlier this year for Switch 1. Came out so late, it makes sense to put that on the Switch 2. But there's people speculating that it could be some sort of Nintendo crossover. I think I saw people on Twitter speculate that it might be another Code sequel. I don't see any of that happening, but something further happened from this, because this all came from a hack, but there's a lot of documents, screenshots, everything coming out regarding Arc Master System. And one of the things that's been talked about from this hack is the discussions that they had with Nintendo when making a physical game. The documents show that Nintendo told Arc Master System that the only cartridge option they had for the developer to put a game on is 64 gigabytes. Now, we reported before that there was a lot of speculation that it was 8 gigabytes and 64 gigabytes as the two options that Nintendo was giving developers. However, with what this document stating, they are only giving developers a 64 gigabyte option or a straight game keycard option, which kind of makes sense. There's been so many titles that have been coming out left and right to be confirmed as a game keycard that would not have been considered a game keycard on Switch 1, for example. Like all of the Sega titles. Like Puyo Puyo Tetris is 2 gigabytes. That doesn't make sense to be a game keycard. However, with the 64 gigabyte cartridges, this does make sense why everything's leaning towards that game keycard option. Because if you guys don't know, 64 gigabytes is super expensive. 32 gigs was already expensive on the Switch 1. That's why there was only 5 games out there that had a 32 gigabyte Switch cartridge. It was Tears of the Kingdom, Witcher 3. I think those are the only 2 games in America that released on a 32 gigabyte cartridge. And then in Japan, I think it was Dragon Quest Builders, Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2, and then another game. Because no one was wanting to do 32 gigabytes as that was super duper expensive. That's why a lot of games had the download required, or part of the game was on the cartridge, you had to download the rest. Cartridges is overall a very expensive thing to do. That's why we've done that whole Rare Switch game series. If you guys don't know, the reason why games don't get reprinted is, one, cartridges are so expensive to make when it comes to games and stuff. And secondly, it's due to the fact that Nintendo makes it to where you have to order a specific amount compared to like PlayStation and Xbox. You have to order a lot at once. And these are all factors that are probably playing into factor when it comes to game keycards with the Switch 2, because it's probably the same mindset with having to order so many. Not to mention, 64 gigabytes is going to be expensive. We talked about how CD Projekt Red said that Witcher 3 was honestly not that profitable because they made a physical release for it on Nintendo Switch where all of it was on cartridge. The same thing is probably going to happen with Cyberpunk. We know that's a 64 gigabyte cartridge with everything on it. And honestly, I mean, I'm excited for that, but it's probably not going to make them much money, which is probably going to indicate a lot of developers going down this game keycard path, which is what we're already seeing. Again, another game that makes perfect sense why it's a game keycard now is Bravely Default. A lot of us was confused because that would have been a game that made sense to be on cartridge. But if Nintendo's only giving developers 64 gigabytes as an option, then no one's gonna do that because those cartridges are super duper expensive. Now, the best thing that I could find online is that it indicates that if a developer wanted, and this is just a rumor, but this is what I've been finding online, what people have been saying through past things, that if a developer wanted to do a game on a 64 gigabyte cartridge, that is gonna cost a developer $16. Now, I'm sure once they do a bulk deal of so many cartridges, that will lower, but that's still a pretty hefty price point to have for a cartridge. And I imagine a game keycard is significantly less to make. Now, what I am hoping, and I really hope this happens, is I'm hoping that Nintendo gives developers more options when it comes to cartridge sizes as we get further into the Nintendo Switch 2. I know, for example, that 32 gigabyte cartridge for the Switch 1 was something that was not available before in the past when the Switch 1 was coming out. I believe, if I understand correctly, is that Nintendo gave more developer options for cartridges as we went further through the Switch. So I'm hopeful maybe 1 year from now, Switch 2 developers will have the option to do, I don't know, an 8 gigabyte card, a 16 gigabyte, a 32. It doesn't make sense that Nintendo's locking it in specifically for 64 gigabytes for the rest of the system cycle. At least that's what I'm hopeful for. I'm sure that this is going to annoy a lot of people as more and more games come out, because now, if this is true, which it more than likely is true, 95% of third-party games are just going to be game keycards, guys. And honestly, I would say probably a higher percentage than that is going to be game keycards. I don't know what this looks like for companies like Limited Run or Video Games Plus. We talked about how Video Games Plus was hoping to re-release these games fully on cartridge down the road, as they have been fully capable of doing that with first-party games. There's so much questions right now and so much uncertainty that I'm hopeful that something comes out soon where there's going to be more developer options. It really seems like this is more on Nintendo now rather than the developers. A lot of people was thinking it was developers going cheap and stuff like that, but honestly, this is more on Nintendo now at this point, and I'm hopeful Nintendo does something about this. Really, the only way to fix this is by giving developers more options for game keycards. Now, I definitely want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this matter, as this is kind of an evolving situation. It continues to change for the bad, if I'm being honest, and I hope there's a positive in the future from this story, but I don't think anything's going to change for the rest of the year. And if you guys are wanting it to change, you're gonna have to riot for it. And not enough people are talking about the game keycards to where I feel like it's gonna make a difference. But hopefully more people complain about it, Nintendo responds and gives developers more options. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. All right, our next story, let's talk about something exciting and unexpected, because this type of announcement is something you would have seen at a Nintendo Direct, if I'm being honest. But Sega out of nowhere was like, yeah, Virtual Fighter 5 is coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. They had a full-on trailer where they talked more about the game and announced that the Switch 2 version of the game was on the way. This is a pretty big deal, as from my understanding, Virtual Fighter has never been on a Nintendo platform before. Now, there's been Virtual Fighter crossovers before on Nintendo platforms, like Smash Bros, for example. You can get the Mii costumes. But in terms of a full-on Virtual Fighter game, we have not had that on a Nintendo platform before. And this is a mainline Virtual Fighter game coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, Sega's starting to announce a lot of things for the Switch 2, so I'm expecting to see them announce Atlas titles soon, because that's the only thing that has not been announced for the Switch 2 yet when it comes to Sega. And obviously, Atlas is a pretty big deal for Sega, which probably means that we're getting the announcement of Persona 3 for the Nintendo Switch 2. Ah, I hate you so much! I hate this game, bro. Oh my gosh. I have it on my shelf to remember the amount of pain and, I guess, good nights of sleep too on top of that, because, you know, the game made me fall asleep. But yeah, Persona 3 is probably coming to the Switch 2. Metaphor is probably coming to the Switch 2 pretty soon as well. I'm just curious which is coming out first because those are similar audiences, and I know Sega probably wouldn't want to release both so soon, but who knows. Persona 3 Reload coming to the Switch 2. Announcement's probably coming pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the games that will be announced at a rumored summer Nintendo Direct, because that's unfortunately a big deal to a lot of people. For some reason, people like Persona 3 Reload. I really don't understand how anybody could like that game. There's so many problems with the game. Like, I could go on a full-on rant, but this is not a Persona 3 rant video. But Virtual Fighter's on the way. Big game to have, especially as fighting games seem to be a pretty big deal on Nintendo Switch 2 right now. It was a pretty big deal on Switch 1. You know, you had Mortal Kombat 1 on the Switch. Now with Switch 2, you're starting to get Street Fighter 6. Virtual Fighter's on the way. Tekken 8 is rumored to come to the Switch 2 on top of that. So third-party games are going crazy on Nintendo Switch 2. Another pretty crazy thing that honestly was not expecting to see this to come from an app, because the Nintendo Today app sometimes has been very beneficial and sometimes borderline useless. But we got news that you will actually be able to use the Joy-Con mouse feature on the home screen of Nintendo Switch 2. You can see the mouse being fully used onto the screen. Honestly, pretty exciting. I know this doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but when I see this, I'm just automatically thinking of how great Mario Maker 3 is going to be on Nintendo Switch 2, because having a mouse for Mario Maker, dude, I feel like there is going to be some incredible things that happen from the next Mario Maker game just due to this mouse. Everything's going to be easier to build. Like, this is probably any Mario Maker's fans' dream come true, having something like this ever since the gamepad is now gone from the Wii U. Because I know with the Switch 2, don't know about y'all, but I thought it was difficult making levels on the Switch with Mario Maker 2. And I'm sure now with the Switch 2 with Mario Maker 3, it's going to be really nice, I hope. I honestly think there's going to be some crazy things that happens just for more first-party games than just Mario Maker. I'm really excited to test out these mouse features. Got a Fast Fusion update. I think they actually dropped a brand new trailer of that a few days ago. I could be wrong, but the developers of Fast Fusion talked about how a future update could be coming to the game where you'll be able to utilize 120 frames per second into that game. And if that happens, it looks like it's going to be a free update, which is absolutely crazy, because this is what, like a $15 game? These developers are going all out on Fast Fusion. This game is looking absolutely phenomenal. This is one that I'm definitely picking up, and honestly, I heavily recommend you guys picking it up, as Fast RMX for the Switch 1 was an incredible game, and this is the first time that we're getting a full brand new game since the Wii U, because Fast RMX is actually a remaster of the one that came out on Wii U. This is a brand new full-on game from the Fast series that is coming onto the Switch 2. We haven't had a sequel in over 10 years? Was it 2014 when that game came out? Wow, I am old, because I actually remember vividly when that game was coming out like it was yesterday. There's few moments that I'm like, oh wow, I'm old. And this is one of these moments that I'm like, wow, I'm actually starting to become old. Fast Fusion is coming out soon. It's a launch day title. Heavily recommend you guys pick it up. I know it's going to be absolutely phenomenal, especially if you're a fan of F-Zero. That's probably the only thing you're going to get F-Zero for a bit in terms of a brand new game, other than a remaster, of course, because you know you got the Switch GameCube support happening. Either way, definitely pick this up. If 120 frames per second happens on that game is going to look crazy. Cannot wait to utilize that mode if we get it. And for our last story, we have news regarding the spines again. We're back to talking about the Switch spines. It's been shown now that other countries have different font on the spines of the games. Now, people are talking about how they prefer the American version that's on there, since it's like a font that like goes with the game, where it seems like the font that we see from other countries are gonna always be the same thing no matter what. Me personally, I still stay true to my word. I feel like the red, you know, with the same font like this is perfect. But I figured you guys might be interested in hearing that, because I know we have some people from other countries watching this. So if you're a fan of the American copy, You're more than likely not getting that for whatever reason. Why? I don't know why Nintendo's doing that. They do weird things such as game key cards, as you can see, and only giving developers 64 gigabytes as your only option for cartridge. Which, you know, after thinking about it, what about like Hitman, for example? I'm pretty sure that game is over 70 gigabytes because it's 3 games into one. What would have happened if they were like, hey, we want to put this on here, but it's a 70 gigabyte game? Would Nintendo help them out, or was it always just going to be a game key card? I don't know, man. I don't know. Guys, that is everything I have for you tonight. I definitely want to know what you guys think of what we talked about today. Obviously, there was a lot of bad news regarding the 64 gigabyte cartridges because with that being the case, a majority of every third-party game is going to follow that pattern of game key cards. At least first-party Nintendo games aren't, but it'd be nice to have third-party games follow that soon. And like I said, I'm hopeful that Nintendo changes this a year from now. Who knows? See what happens, but I definitely want to hear your guys' thoughts about it in the comment section below. Guys, I have been talking for way too much. Make sure to backslash that subscribe button, like the video, check out the Twitter, check out the Discord server, Instagram, all that good stuff in the description below. Become a MonadoMax Marine, $5 a month, helps out the channel tremendously, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. Wow, you know, I only have a few weeks left of looking at this awesome red spine background. Although it's going to take probably a year till I get Switch 2 games where I would have a full shelf like that. But at least one part of the shelf. I think it's going to take a long time. Well, I don't know. It took me less than a year to fill this up, so who knows. Oh, I'm still talking. I should just end this.